Welcome back to TLT Talks. I'm Wi-Fi, but we're going to push through. Beautiful nature. Look at that. Oh, it's been nice. The end of 2 weeks. I'll be heading back to New York City directly after this live. We are joined today by a very dear friend and a special guest who nailed it, right, which tends to be the most painful part of this process. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the wonderful Deborah Nall. How are you doing, hon?
Good, thanks. How are you, Eugene? I'm gonna switch my camera.
Yeah, you gotta go vertical, I think.
There we go.
I'm doing wonderful. I haven't had this much nature in a long time. Look at you, you're like glowing. The curly hair, the smile, you're
Thanks.
glowing, girl.
Thank you. So good to see you. I know you got
Actually,
to
it's
get that
funny.
nature in, right? Get that
Right?
fresh
Actually, it's
air.
fun. It's funny. Debbie and I were catching up on right before this, and she's like, "How's it going?" And I'm in like full blown go mode. I'm like, "Yeah, deals and this and structure, whatever." She's like, "Hold on a minute. What's been your favorite part of this trip so far?" And I was like, "Oh, it's amazing." And I totally melted. Like my shoulders went down, my energy
Really?
went up. I was like, "Oh my God, my kids, it's been great." And I'm like, "Holy moly, you just Tony Robbins me. You did it. It was a total Padma interrupt. It was total you Eugened me. It
Positive.
was amazing. Oh my God, it was so good to be on the other side of that for once. It was so great. Lots of people joining us. Welcome, guys. Welcome, everyone. Well, guys, let me take a second to
Hi,
introduce
everybody.
you to Deb. She is the founder and CEO of Cultivate Plus, which is a full suite of marketing services, whatever you may need. She's actually supported the Lidback team in our early years, including but not limited to our logo. She actually designed our logo. She was the former head of
Still one of my
marketing
favorites.
for ha ha ha. I love my little house. I love my little house.
Love it.
She was the former head of marketing for Compass out in Boston, and ran marketing out there for a while. Before that, she was a senior producer at multiple top advertising firms. She handled things like Vogue and Harry Winston. I keep her away from my wife at all times. That's not true because they're like besties, but whatever. Um, and so you might be asking, what the hell is this person doing on a real estate show talking about investment properties? Well, let me tell you, that is because you don't have to be a broker or the monopoly landlord guy to get involved in real estate. There was just someone that her passion was marketing. She's just and for the last 10 15 years, whatever, I'll let her tell her story. She's been a serial property investor, very involved in real estate, very educated, always sharing stuff with me about markets and investments and whatever, when factually should be the other way around. Her and I have done several transactions together. So with that,
Yeah.
welcome to the show, Deb.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Well, give us some background. Like, tell us about
Yeah,
yourself.
sure. Well, I mean, I was a Navy brat, so I've moved 25 times in my 40 some odd years on this planet. So, change is something that's just normal for me.
Mm-hmm.
And how I got into real estate beyond just doing it myself, like, was that my mom was a real estate broker growing up.
Mm,
Because it was an easy thing for her to transition as we moved, for her to just have a career. And so she was a real estate broker, then she was a mortgage broker, then she was a financial planner. So she
nice.
taught me, like, I just kind of like abstracted like all this information and knowledge from her at growing up. And then I was living in New York. I was living in Brooklyn in Carroll Gardens, and I had a crazy roommate, as I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. And I was just like, I need to get my own place. And I kept looking for apartments and I couldn't afford anything by myself. Like, so I kept just going further and further out on the F line, until I got basically, way out into Kensington area. And so I could find a place I could afford to rent by myself. And then my mom was like, why don't you buy a place? Like, if you're already, maybe you can make that work. And I was like, really? Okay, let's think about that. I was 27 years old. My parents actually did a great thing for me too, which I highly recommend. If anyone has kids, please do this. Set your kids up for establishing credit really, really young, because transformed me being able to buy my own place at 27 with no help from anybody. Like, it was me, myself, and I remember at the closing table, everybody, parents, no boyfriend, nobody. I'm like, no, but I had a really creative mortgage broker, Penny Heck, who I highly recommend, and I can introduce you to people if she wants. She got really creative. I wanted to buy a co-op in New York, and they required 20% down. I didn't have 20% down. I had 10. And she did a 80-10-10, which is 80% mortgage. I had 10% down, and we did a 10% HELOC at the time of closing. And that was how I bought my first apartment in New York. I lived there for 5 years. That was the other thing. My parents were like, the only interpretation they had about me buying was like, can you stay put for as long as you would need to be able to make it sense to buy a place. And so I lived there for 5 years, and that was the longest place I've and then I was like, I need to leave. It's time to go. I gotta get some change. The gypsy blood in me was like, that's got to move. And then I moved to Queens, rented a little bit for there, and then I bought my place at the Edge where I met you. And I still became a landlord at my first apartment, and then bought my second one in Brooklyn, and it's just been kind of going like that ever since.
Love it. Yeah. And that's where Deborah and I met. Our dogs became pals. We became pals.
Yeah.
It's been quite the ride. So Deborah, look, you own property, multiple places around the country. You're involved in a lot of different stuff. For the person out there that is 20 investment property, owning their primary home, how do you get started? What are the first couple steps?
Well, I mean, I think it's always really important to understand your big why into getting into real estate. You don't necessarily have to buy a home that you're going to live in. You can, if it makes sense for you based on the market that you're in, to still rent, or because of your flexibility or whatever, but where you feel that there are great opportunities and deals abound, and then figuring out obviously your finances. Like, that's a big key. It's like whether or not, if you're gonna be living there, you can get a primary mortgage. If you're not going to be living there, you have to get an investment mortgage, which has different criterias and different rates based on your credit score. And then, obviously also, if you're just investing, you could also do hard money lending. You could do private funding, buyer seller financing. Like, there's so many ways to skin that cat from a financial perspective, but you need to figure out like what's your objective of buying a place to begin with, and then figuring out what can you afford. Obviously house hacking has become a really big thing nowadays, especially in markets like New York, where it's really safe, where you can buy a place, but you buy a 2-bedroom, but rent out the other room and become like a landlord / roommate situation. There's just so many ways to do real estate. And I think, unfortunately, the way that our education system has taught people how to buy real estate is just like, you buy it as your primary home. And that's like the only kind of knowledge that is kind of out there as that the most people talk about. And there's just a whole nother world out there. So
yeah, for sure. Actually, it's one of my biggest challenges, that when I speak to people are like hardwired for a 30-year fix. They're hardwired for, I'm owning for 20 years. And it's like, listen, I'm not from this country, right? I'm originally from Ukraine. It's like the American dream used to be, you went to school, you got a job, you put a down payment on a house, you paid the house for 30 years, you lived in the house, and then maybe you sold that house and bought another house. It's just not the landscape today. That's just not the landscape today. Today, it's all about, people move every 5 to 7 years. I've moved every 2 years for the past 10 years, basically, because I kept riding the wave of appreciation myself. So, what's really cool is I think you've hit on some really good points. For those people out there that may not know about this, there's 3 primary mortgage products. There's a 30-year fixed, which it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a 30-year amortization. It's the same payment for 30 years. What they don't tell you about the 30-year fixed is that over 30 years, you will pay back double. So if you borrow $1 million over 30 years, you're paying back 2. It's like the ultimate scam. And very unlikely are you going to own the house for 30 years in an ability where you can't pay down that loan faster. Then you've got a 10-year arm, right? Which is it's an adjustable rate mortgage, and for the first 10 years, or 5 years, 7 or
5 years,
whatever.
7, yeah.
Yeah, the rate is fixed, but you're not. It's cheaper. It's significantly cheaper because it's only fixed for a certain amount of time. And then you have an interest only, which it could be 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. Again, the same thing. It's the number is how many years it's fixed. But the interest only, it's kind of like that credit card where you're only paying interest and you're not paying down the principal balance. And in many cases, what makes most sense is to take something interest only, not pay down any principal, because there's no reason to, because you're not going to own the thing forever. So that's a whole different conversation. But
yeah, also like people also think that they have to put 20% down. Like that's also like a big myth in the world, that you have to put 20% down. I've never put 20% down on a property. It's my first one was 10% down. The one when I bought the Edge, I put only 5% down because I got an FHA loan, which is another great opportunity and product. So
and so look, I think the message from old Deborah and I is, number one, just get yourself familiar with the financial products out there. Reach out to myself or Deb or whoever, in terms of getting yourself connected with a lender that's really savvy. That's not just gonna be like, oh yeah, you're pre-qualified, go. But we'll take the time to explain to you all the different mortgage products out there. And the other point to hit home on is get educated, right? So it's not that you just have to do a primary home or own. If you don't want to do the real estate yourself, there are things like syndication. There are things like REITs, which are real estate trusts. There are plenty of people that are already doing it and then just offer you the opportunity to invest in them for a return. So you can get involved that way. There's a lot of GoFundMe pages online. I mean, real estate is huge. And it's not just like buy a property and rent it out. That's not the only way to be involved in real estate. Again, any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. Happy to walk you through the multitude of options out there. What's cool about working with our team is we're not limited to, real estate. I am a landlord. I am a developer. I've got access to developers. So our developers are always looking to raise money, and there's plenty of opportunity for someone to be in a development project without doing the development on their own. But that leads me to the point of resources and education, right? So Deb, you had nothing to do with real estate and got yourself very educated on real estate. What are some so I'm in it, right? So I think this information is much better coming from you because I'm in it. I live it. I breathe it. For someone that's not in it, like I am, what are some of the resources? How can someone get educated? Like, do they just go to Google or like what? How can someone?
Please don't go to Google.
How can someone get on the path of learning about this stuff?
Well, I mean, honestly, I do think I went and got my license. I do have my license, but I still use like people who are in it every day to list and sell my properties. But I thought that was educational in and of itself. But a great organization and community that I get and am part of every day is called biggerpockets.com. Especially for investors, like if you're kind of looking more to the investment side, but they talk about like, getting your primary and secondary homes, and there's just a plethora of information there, including, short-term rentals, which I do as well with like Airbnb and VRBO. They talk about syndication, they talk about developing, and they're professionals there. So you have people who are doing it on their own, and they kind of they write articles and blog posts and vlogs about what they've learned and the things that they've experienced through the years. And then there's also like the Bigger Pockets team, the actual team of the organization, who do a lot of analysis of the different markets around the country. And they really, dial it down and get really into the nitty gritty of the numbers, which I think sometimes can be very intimidating for people, right? They're like, how do I know if this is a good deal or not? Like, they don't understand, cap rates and all that kind of stuff, or understand like what's the ROI and the loan to value when they're talking to the banks and stuff like that. So all those kind of acronyms and information you can find and learn more about on Bigger Pockets. Mashvisor is another great platform that I use a lot, where they utilize and they aggregate data from Airbnb and VRBO if you're trying to figure out like whether or not to buy an investment property and it will be a good, passive income for short-term rental. They have a whole, calculators and ways to analyze a deal. And then Rentometer, if you're looking to just rent a single family or a multifamily home and you want to understand like what are the rents going for in your area, and kind of how you can then look up the addresses of those properties and really kind of get a better understanding of what's happening in that industry, in that marketplace.
Very cool. And
So,
obviously, compass.com,
yes.
obviously, the nationwide brand where, no, it's actually really cool. So I'm looking to expand the team into Florida. I think it's a really big
Oh, yeah,
market.
great. Yeah.
It's a market that really excites me. It's not tomorrow. It's going to be,
Reciprocity with your license.
yeah, exactly. No state tax, whatever. It's cool. So not,
Yeah.
not like overnight. I'm building it out. I like to take my time building things out. But what was really cool is I actually got to experience Compass as a buyer. So I went on compass.com. I created a profile. I went to Florida. I got the user experience, and it is, I'm not saying this because I'm a Compass. Like, this is full transparency. It is fantastic. I'm literally in bed with Julie, we're just like saving things, creating collections. It was so easy. So yeah, compass.com, nationwide, 35 different regions or even more at this point. I can't even keep count anymore. But just if you want to get the lay of the land of what's going on, Compass has a lot of good stuff on it. I agree with all those different sites. For New York City specifically, Yimby's really good. Yimby's always giving you the latest and what's being developed, what's the next latest neighborhood, things of that nature.
Right.
But honestly,
if you're looking to develop, if you're looking to develop properties or become a developer, obviously going to the city sites too, of understanding like who's getting permits and pulling where, because then you can figure out where's the path of progress, and being like, okay, like everybody's going to that area. I need to be, on top of that. So.
Yeah, Deb and I were talking before the live, and I was like, I'm just curious for me, which it's going to be a nice segue, but I'm just curious for me, like, Deb, how do you decide where and how and whatever? And she said this thing about, follow the path of progress. And I'm like, you know what? Have you seen A Few Good Men? This is advice I give all the time. There's a scene in A Few Good Men where, Kevin Bacon there's this whole thing about code reds, right? Trying to flush out whether there was a code red or not. For those of you that have seen the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. But Kevin Bacon's like interrogating one of the witnesses, and he gives him the military book of conduct and the military rule book or what. He's like, show me the code red in there as a way to prove code reds don't exist. And then as he's walking back, here flies Tom Cruise, grabs the book, redirects, and goes, show me where in this code of conduct book or the rule book it talks about lunchtime. He's like, well, no. He's like, are you telling me you've never had lunch in your whole time here? No, of course. He says, well, how did you know? Follow the crowd at chow time. And so that's usually, honestly, it's simple, but a lot of times that's my advice to my investors, is follow the developers, follow the crowd. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Get there as fast as possible, because by the time the whole crowd is there, you've missed your window. Yeah. But as you see one thing, another thing, follow the crowd. Like it'll happen, especially if it's waterfront. I mean, then it's like a Greenpoint or a Southburg, and that's like easy. So, with that transition, you own different types of property. You've owned primary real estate, which turned into rental property. You own Airbnb. You own, kind of different stuff in different parts of the country. So for someone looking to get started, how do you decide where to buy, what to buy? Do I go Airbnb? Do I buy a building? People think tens of millions of dollars, but like I'm looking in Florida now, you can find 6-unit, 8-unit buildings for like $300,000. So like it doesn't have to be. And plus you take out construction financing, and now it's like 50 to 60 grand to get started. It's not millions and millions of dollars. Right. Or you could buy a primary investment. I mean, there's condos there for like 150 grand. If you go down the road of 10 or 20% down, you're talking about 20 grand to get started. So you don't got to be some Uber to get started. But what was it for you? Like,
and also, you don't even have to use your own money. There's a lot of people who have money that they want to just put it somewhere where they feel like it's going to, appreciate, and it's going to be, safer maybe than the stock market. And they're looking to put their money somewhere. So, you don't necessarily have to even use any of yours. OPM.
OPM.
Money.
OPM.
Love it.
Yeah,
I love all the acronyms in the real estate industry.
So how did you decide?
So I decide.
How do you decide?
So my criteria, I look at a couple different things depending on what my strategy is. So I'm a big fan. I've really enjoyed being a short-term rental property manager, and because there's a lot of personal interaction with guests and stuff, and I actually like that because I'm a people person. So that's been fun. And so right now I'm currently looking at areas that I know that in 2 or 3 years are going to just explode. And that's like the path of progress, right? So as an example, New Bedford, Massachusetts is on the waterfront, as you mentioned, Eugene. And and they are expanding the commuter rail from Boston to New Bedford, and it's supposed to be completed by November of 2023. Well, like now it's like the perfect time to buy there, right? Because you know when that commuter rail is open, the people that are priced out of living in Boston or want to live on the water, but you know don't want to live in Revere, or can't afford to live in Beverly, are going to be in New Bedford, and they're going to be able to commute up and down on the not have to deal with the notorious 93 North traffic. So I'm looking in New Bedford. I'm looking to towns around it that are also, Fall River is also going to have an extension on the commuter rail line there. And those two areas, those two cities are completely kind of different from a demographic perspective. New Bedford is definitely more blue collar. Fall River is a little bit more upscale. And so it also depends on what kind of landlord you want to be or what kind of properties you want to own. Like the multifamilies in New Bedford are abundant. They have all these, you know, row homes with 3 levels that you can build out condos or apartments very easily that are on the market for, you know, and compared to New York, like chump change. So I'm looking there. Boise, Idaho is another place I'm looking, again, for the path of progress. All the people, especially post-COVID situation where people have now realized they don't need to live where they work anymore. And if they've been priced out of the Bay Area because of all that's been going on, or Seattle or Portland that blew up because of people moving from San Francisco in the tech industries, but still like have now been priced out of those markets, are moving to Boise because it has 4 seasons. It's got, you know, the mountains, it's got all this great kind of, you know, culture and everything. So that's another area that I've been looking at and talking to other investors about a lot in the last year. I'm still, you know, a fan, and I think that there is still potential for it. My husband vehemently disagrees with me. But I've seen the path of, like, I've seen a lot of people, who from New York, actually, tons of people when I was in really in the advertising world working there, they moved to Detroit. Like all these advertising and design firms were going there to kind of gentrify it and kind of bring it back into its heyday. Because the buildings there are gorgeous. The architecture and the history is so beautiful, and they're trying to, you know, to bring it back to its heyday. So I still think that, and the interesting thing in there, I was on Bigger Pockets the other day, and they were doing an analysis of like the best markets in the country right now, and Detroit was in the top 2%.
Wow.
I was like, what? I'm like, I was so right. I wanted to buy property there like years ago, and they were going for like $6,000. Like you could put it on a credit card. Like honestly, get some points and buy it on a credit card. Now they're like, and those same properties are at $30,000 now.
Wow.
I mean,
there you go. Well, you know what? Once upon a time, Jeff Levine said, you know what? What about Williamsburg? And people were like, Jeff, are you crazy?
Right?
Are you nuts? You're like, yeah. So no,
Thank God we did that, right?
There you go. You know what's funny? I remember when I bought my place at the Edge, I borrowed money from Julie's mom and this whole thing, and everyone was like, "Dude, you're gonna pay $600 a foot to be in Williamsburg? Are you insane? Are you out of your mind?" And then after we started to do well, all those same people, you know, ironically, some were friends and family. All those same people are like, "Yeah, I always knew it." I was like, "Yeah, what?" always knew what exactly.
Right.
No, but yeah,
you just made up a good point too, and I did the exact same thing where we got creative. We saw an opportunity of moving to Williamsburg right after the 2008-2010 crash. The sponsors of the buildings were giving great deals, and we were like, this is an opportunity. We saw it as an opportunity. And I did the same thing as you. I scrambled like heck to make sure I got to even like scrounge up the 5% I needed to put down, because all of my money at the time was still like stuck as equity, beautiful equity in my other apartment. And my mortgage broker was like, I don't know if we're going to make these numbers work. I'm like, we're going to make these numbers work. And I was like calling up my uncle. I need to borrow some money for closing costs. I called up my parents. I mean, I need you to loan me some money for my down payment. And, you know, I made it work.
And then 10 years later, we sold it, and you did really, really well with it. Killed it.
It was amazing. I crushed it.
Killed it.
And then that's how I got my apartment in Boston. And
there you go. Well, guys, I'm here with Deb Nall. We're about to wrap up. I want to leave a few minutes for any questions, comments, etc. But I just want to say, like, you know what this is a common line of mine that what we do in our business in the Live Back team is we handle all areas of real estate. We do rental, sales, new development, commercial, whatever. But my favorite, you're not supposed to have a favorite kid, but my favorite is helping people build their wealth through real estate, and so
Yeah.
I totally agree with everything you're saying. And some really easy ones, look for apartments where you can add value. So buy an
Definitely.
alcove studio, put up a wall, and then you can rent it as a 1 bedroom, or buy a 1 bedroom, put up a wall, rent it as a two. So value adds really easy. The buy it old, fix it up, and then rent it is a lot more difficult than buying it as
I
one
love
size.
it.
Yeah, and look, there you go. And there you go. There's everyone's got a flavor. So if
Because
you're into that thing,
there are
you
platforms and companies that help you.
for sure, for sure. So for sure that's
Yeah.
available to you. New development's a great vehicle at any given time. Like we just helped one of our clients. I'm not gonna say his name obviously, but we're always in the hunt for new development and where the deals are. And we helped him buy in a building. He got in at a basis. We were one of the first 10 contracts. We got in at a basis of 2.2 for a 3 bedroom apartment, and the building was slated to close a year later. By the time he was closing, the comp 2 floors above him had closed for $600,000 more. So
Wow. Yeah, it's great.
he went in for 10%, which is 200 grand. And so essentially his return on investment wasn't 600 grand on 2.2 million. His return on investment was 600 grand on 200. So he had a 300% increase
Yeah.
before he even closed. So, I mean, look, that's a home run. It's not going to happen every time, but as Deborah says very accurately, follow the infrastructure. Like wherever you see lots of things happening, things are boarded up. You see the Starbucks opening, you see the Dunkin' Donuts opening.
Right. Yeah.
Real
The coffee
estate
shops
is,
are key, actually.
yeah,
Follow the coffee
yeah.
shops.
Follow the coffee shops. I will tell you that real estate is not rocket science. It is just studying patterns.
Yep.
So for anyone that's familiar with Williamsburg, if I could put you in a time machine, keeping what you know now, how many apartments would you buy at the edge, right in Williamsburg? So it's the same thing. Anywhere
Oh
you
my God.
see
I would have bought
where there's a
storage units there too.
the building. Yeah. So follow the patterns. Like if you see,
Yeah.
Greenpoint's a really good example. There's one building up. They're slated to build 7 more. It's not a guess. That it's going to be worth 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% more. Maybe it takes 2 years and maybe it takes 8, but it's not an if, it's just a when. So following the infrastructure is really, really good. I mean, look, don't try to do this all by yourself. Deborah is a serial investor. She works with me in New York. She works with other brokers in other parts of the country. There's no reason to do this on your own. I have WebMD, but I'm always going to see a doctor. There's no reason to do this on your own. And have
there's
the
such a
financial
community,
part
and
worked
people
out.
love talking about it. Like every time you get together, it's like the one topic at cocktail parties that people will talk about for hours.
Sure.
Everybody loves
For
talking
sure.
about real estate, so it's great just to chat.
Yeah, for sure. And this, I'll leave you guys with this, because it seems like there's no questions. You guys, Deb, how can people find you? They want to hang out, ask a
Go to
question, whatever.
cultivateplus.com. You can email me directly there. I'm actually going to be hosting some classes and courses about real estate investing and marketing. And like how to do short-term rentals and how to do renovations, and utilizing great platforms like Havenly, which is an interior design platform. They can hire a designer, an interior designer, to help you do a room for like as little as $79. Like what? Like I did that for our living room. It came out beautifully. And Sweeten, that's another great organization that I love. They help you put you in together with general contractors, so you don't have to vet them. They do it for you.
I mean,
and
there's
they
so
do the
many
whole,
resources out
they
there.
manage it for you. So it's like, how would you not want to get doing it? Yeah. So, but yeah, it's cultivateplus.com. You can find me on
By the way,
social.
if you need marketing help, I'm just telling you guys, this woman's a genius. Like honestly, the early part, I mean, Sarah Katz is on here, who runs all of our marketing for the Live Back team. We collaborate a lot with Deb early on, from curating our content to our logo to helping us with our mail I mean, literally, like it's a full suite. Whatever I am for real estate, she is for marketing. So highly, highly, highly recommend her. And what I would leave you guys with is this: in the last 50 to 100 years, depending on which candlestick you look at, the best performing asset classes for the last 50 to 100 years. Number one is the S&P index, and right behind it is real estate. So don't wait. Don't wait until you saved up $1 million. It's not necessary. Reach out to myself or any broker that you're comfortable with. give them the amount of money you're comfortable investing, and they'll probably be able to lead you to a place like a REIT or a fund or something. And if they don't have an answer, then reach out to me and Deborah will guide you.
Yeah.
We'll help.
Yeah. I mean, even things as little as crowdfunding, like on fundrise.com, you can put down as little as like $500 and get involved in real estate. So ride the journey with us. It's fun.
My dear friend, I miss you.
I miss you too. Thank you so much, Eugene. It's a pleasure. It's so great to see you.
Guys, be well. Thanks, Debbie. See you guys.
Safe travels home.
Yeah.
Bye.